Called a spinster, she married a poor man, but then discovered his last name was Rockefeller. Before we begin this beautiful period romance story, tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I love knowing where you're joining us from. And subscribe if you love romantic stories like this. Now, let's fall into this tale together. The brass bell above the entrance of the Vandermeer Hotel chimed weakly as another guest departed, luggage in tow, never to return. Catherine Vandermeer stood behind the mahogany reception desk, her emerald eyes tracking the man's retreat through the frosted glass doors. 29 years old, auburn hair pinned in a practical bun, she wore a tailored wool dress of deep burgundy, elegant once, now showing wear at the cuffs. It was January 1888, and Manhattan's Gilded Age glittered all around her crumbling 5-story establishment. Outside, carriages clattered past on cobblestone streets. Gas lamps flickered to life as dusk settled over the city. Through the tall windows, she could see the skeletal frames of new buildings rising, steel and ambition thrusting toward the heavens, while her family's legacy sank into the earth. The Vandermeer Hotel had once been the jewel of Lower Manhattan. Her grandfather built it in 1852 when the neighborhood teemed with merchant princes and shipping magnates. The lobby still showed traces of that glory. Marble floors now cracked, crystal chandeliers dimmed by dust, velvet furniture faded to the color of old wine. Gilt-framed mirrors reflected a monument to better days. Catherine's father had died 2 years ago, leaving her with more than grief. The ledgers told a brutal story. Debts to 3 different Wall Street banks, unpaid invoices from suppliers, a mortgage that devoured what little revenue remained. The new elite preferred modern establishments uptown, the Plaza, the Waldorf, who wanted old-world charm when you could have electric lights and hydraulic elevators. Still here, my dear. Her Aunt Vivian descended the curved staircase, her black taffeta gown rustling. At 56, Vivian Hartley was Catherine's only living relative on her mother's side, a widow who'd moved into the hotel after her husband's shipping business collapsed. Her silver hair was arranged in elaborate curls, her neck adorned with pearls that had seen better decades. "You should be at the Astor's reception tonight. Mrs. Astor specifically mentioned eligible bachelors." Catherine didn't look up from the reservation book, nearly empty for the coming week. "Someone needs to manage the hotel. That's precisely why you need a husband." Vivian's voice sharpened. "A man with capital connections. Sell this albatross. Salvage what remains of the Vandermeer name. You're 29, has Catherine. The world doesn't wait." The words stung because they carried truth. In drawing rooms across Manhattan, she knew what they whispered. The Vandermeer spinster clinging to a sinking ship. Once she'd been invited to balls, pursued by junior partners at law firms and distant cousins of railroad barons. That was before her father's debts became public knowledge, before Vandermeer became synonymous with decline. "I'm not selling." Catherine closed the ledger with finality. "This hotel is all I have of him." Vivian sighed. The sound of a battle postponed, not surrendered. "Then at least hire proper management. You cannot do everything yourself. It's unseemly for a woman of your station to be seen scrubbing floors." "I haven't scrubbed floors in weeks," Catherine replied dryly. "We can't afford the staff who used to do it." But her aunt had planted a seed. That night, alone in her 3rd-floor apartment within the hotel, Catherine sat at her father's old desk and composed an advertisement for the New York Tribune. Wanted, hotel manager. Experience required, modest salary, integrity essential. Apply in person, Vandermeer Hotel, 47 Chambers Street. She posted it the next morning, expecting nothing. 3 days later, on a bitter afternoon when sleet rattled the window panes, he walked through the door. Catherine noticed his hands first. They were large, calloused in ways that spoke of physical labor, yet he held his worn leather portfolio with the careful grace of someone accustomed to finer things. He was tall, perhaps 6 feet, with broad shoulders beneath a plain wool coat that had seen many winters. Dark brown hair, slightly too long, fell across his forehead. His eyes were a startling clear gray, the color of steel. "I'm here about the position." His voice was deep, measured, with an accent she couldn't quite place. Not the clipped tones of Boston Brahmins, nor the affected British inflection some New Yorkers adopted. Something from the interior, Ohio perhaps, or western Pennsylvania. Catherine straightened behind the desk, suddenly aware of how she must look. Ink stains on her fingers, hair escaping its pins, exhaustion carved into the shadows beneath her eyes. "You have hotel experience. 5 years managing an establishment in Cleveland. Before that, I worked in various capacities from St. Louis to Chicago. He set the portfolio down, extracted a single sheet of paper, references, she assumed, though the names meant nothing to her. I understand numbers, supply chains, staff management. I'm told I'm good with difficult guests. Why leave Cleveland? A pause, barely perceptible. The hotel changed ownership. The new proprietor brought his own people. Catherine studied him. His coat was shabby but clean. His boots, though scuffed, were well maintained. Everything about him suggested a man who'd fallen on hard times but refused to surrender dignity. She understood that intimately. The salary is $40 monthly, she said. Room and board included. The hotel is struggling, I won't mislead you. We have 8 guests currently. We should have 40. Then we'll need to find 32 more. The corner of his mouth lifted. Not quite a smile, but something warmer than professional courtesy. My name is Frank Stone. She extended her hand, a gesture her aunt would have deemed inappropriate. His grip was firm, warm despite the January cold. Catherine Vandermeer. When can you start? Now, if you'll have me. Frank Stone moved into a small room on the 4th floor and immediately proved his worth. Within a week, he'd renegotiated contracts with the coal supplier and the laundry service, shaving 15% from monthly expenses. He repaired a persistent leak in the 3rd floor hallway. Apparently he knew plumbing as well as bookkeeping. He trained the remaining staff of 3 with quiet authority: Mary the chambermaid, old Thomas the porter, and Mrs. Chen, who managed the kitchen. But it was the evenings Catherine treasured most. After the last guest retired and the gas lamps were dimmed to conserve fuel, she and Frank would sit in the lobby's worn leather chairs, going over the day's accounts. The hotel creaked around them like a ship at anchor, and snow fell softly beyond the windows, muffling the city's endless roar. "You studied commerce?" she asked one night, watching him calculate revenue projections with practiced ease. Informally, he didn't look up from the ledger. "My father believed in practical education. I learned by doing." What did he do? Frank's pencil paused. He invested, made some wise choices, more foolish ones. He's been gone 7 years. "I'm sorry." Catherine knew the particular weight of that loss. "My father was an optimist. He believed the neighborhood would revive, that the old families would return. He borrowed against that belief. And you?" Frank's gray eyes found hers. "What do you believe?" No one had asked her that. Not her aunt, not the bankers, not the society matrons who'd written her off. "I believe some things are worth fighting for, even when the fight seems hopeless." Something shifted in his expression. Recognition, perhaps, or respect. "Then we're well matched, Miss Vandermeer." The use of her formal name created a careful distance between them, yet the warmth in his voice bridged it. Catherine found herself noticing things. The way lamplight caught the silver in his dark hair, the competence in his movements, the rare smile that transformed his serious face. She was 29, long past girlish infatuation, yet her heart quickened when his shoulder brushed hers as they bent over the account books. Aunt Vivian noticed, of course. "That man," she said over breakfast in Catherine's apartment, "is entirely too familiar with you. Frank is professional in every regard." "Frank," Vivian's eyebrows arched. "You use his Christian name. He's hotel staff, not a stranger at a ball." But Catherine felt heat rise in her cheeks. "Precisely. He's staff, an employee of uncertain background and no social standing. You've been alone too long, my dear. It makes you vulnerable to unsuitable attachments." Catherine set down her teacup with deliberate care. "I'm vulnerable to eviction if I don't keep this hotel running. Frank Stone is helping me do that. Nothing more." But it was more, and she knew it. The way he brought her coffee without asking, prepared exactly as she liked it. The way he'd placed a vase of winter greenery on the front desk. "For morale," he'd said, though they both knew it was for her. The way his hand had lingered on hers when passing her the morning mail, a touch that lasted one heartbeat too long to be accidental. She was falling for her hotel manager, and she had neither the time nor the luxury for such foolishness. Then the letter arrived. It came on a grey February morning, delivered by a messenger in the livery of Whitmore and Associates, one of Wall Street's most prestigious law firms. Catherine signed for the envelope with trembling fingers, noting the wax seal embossed with an unfamiliar crest. Frank stood nearby, sorting the day's mail. "Bad news?" "I don't know yet." She broke the seal, unfolded heavy parchment paper, and began to read. "Dear Miss Vandermeer, this office represents the estate of your maternal grandfather, Mr. Nathaniel Hartley, deceased 1871. Recent discoveries during the settlement of related estates have brought to light certain assets previously unknown to your family. Your grandfather held shares in the Standard Oil Trust, acquired through partnership with Mr. John D. Rockefeller in 1872. These shares, held in trust under your mother's maiden name, now number 847 certificates. At current valuation, their worth is approximately $340,000. However, certain parties contest your claim to these assets. We request your presence at our offices at your earliest convenience to discuss the matter and review documentation. Yours faithfully, Harrison Whitmore, Esq. The letter slipped from Catherine's fingers. Frank caught it before it hit the floor. $340,000. The number was incomprehensible. The hotel's total debt was perhaps $12,000. With that sum, she could restore the Vandermeer to glory, pay every creditor, secure her future for life. She could. Catherine, Frank's voice seemed to come from a great distance. Sit down, you've gone pale. She let him guide her to a chair, her thoughts spinning. Standard Oil, Rockefeller. Her grandfather had never mentioned such an investment. He'd died when she was 12, a cheerful old man who'd smelled of tobacco and told elaborate stories about his days as a merchant. How had he known John D. Rockefeller? What partnership had forged these shares? Contested, she said aloud, focusing on the problem. Someone's fighting the claim. Frank crouched beside her chair, still holding the letter. His expression had gone carefully neutral. Family inheritance disputes are common. Cousins, distant relatives, they emerge when money appears. I have no cousins on my mother's side. Aunt Vivian was her only sibling. Catherine's mind raced through possibilities. My father's side, perhaps. But they never acknowledged the connection after his business failed. Why would they care now? 300,000 reasons. Frank stood, moving to the window. Outside, snow had begun to fall, coating the city in white. His reflection in the glass looked troubled. You'll need a lawyer, someone who can navigate this. I can barely afford to pay you, let alone a Wall Street attorney. Whitmore represented your grandfather's estate. They'll likely work on contingency, a percentage of what they recover. He turned back to her, and something flickered in those grey eyes. Worry. No, something deeper. Recognition, perhaps. Catherine, this changes everything. If you secure those shares, if, she rose, pacing the lobby's length, the letter says contested. By whom? On what grounds? The question would be answered that very afternoon. A second messenger arrived at 3 o'clock, this one bearing an envelope with no return address. Inside, a brief note in angular handwriting. Dear Cousin Catherine, how delightful to learn of Grandfather Hartley's hidden fortune. Unfortunately, those shares rightfully belong to the Vandermeer estate, as Mother's marriage transferred all maternal assets to Father's control under law. I have documentation to support this claim. I suggest you withdraw your challenge to avoid public embarrassment. The courts look unkindly on grasping spinsters. Your devoted cousin, Edward Vandermeer. Catherine read it twice, fury building with each word. Edward Vandermeer, her father's brother's son, a banker at Morgan & Company, a man she'd met perhaps 3 times in her life. Tall, thin, with pale blonde hair and the permanent sneer of someone who'd never struggled. He'd attended her father's funeral wearing expensive mourning clothes and departed without speaking to her. Now he wanted to steal her inheritance. That snake. Aunt Vivian had read the note over Catherine's shoulder. Edward's father cut him off years ago for gambling debts. He's been rebuilding his reputation, but he's always desperate for capital. Frank read the letter silently, his jaw tightening. He's threatening public humiliation. That means he intends to fight this in the courts and the newspapers simultaneously. Scandal, regardless of the outcome. Let him try. Catherine's voice was steel. Those shares belong to my grandfather, my mother's father. Edward has no claim. Legal truth and social perception are different things. Frank met her eyes. If this becomes a battle, you need to understand what you're facing. Edward moves in powerful circles. He can damage your reputation, make you unwelcome in the society you'll need once you're wealthy. I'm already unwelcome. What more can he take? Frank looked at her for a long moment, and she saw something shift in his expression. A decision made, a line crossed. There's something I need to tell you about who I am. Before he could continue, Thomas the porter burst through the front door, snow swirling in behind him. Miss Vandermeer, there's men outside. Surveyors, looks like. They're measuring the building. Catherine rushed to the window. Sure enough, 3 men in dark coats stood on the sidewalk, one holding a surveyor's transit, another sketching in a notebook. As she watched, a 4th man emerged from a carriage, tall, blonde, wearing a fur-trimmed overcoat worth more than her hotel's monthly revenue. Edward Vandermeer had come to inspect his anticipated prize. The confrontation on the sidewalk was brief and arctic. "Cousin Catherine." Edward's smile was all teeth, no warmth. "I was just having my associates evaluate the property. When I acquire the Standard Oil shares, which legally belong to the Vandermeer estate, I'll need to make decisions about this charming establishment." "You mean when you steal my inheritance?" Catherine stood in the hotel's doorway, Frank a silent presence behind her. Snow fell steadily now, gathering on Edward's expensive coat. "Those shares were my grandfather's personal investment, held in my mother's name. You have no claim. The law says otherwise. A woman's property transfers to her husband upon marriage. Your mother married a Vandermeer, so those assets became Vandermeer property." He gestured to the building with a gloved hand. "Frankly, I'm doing you a favor. This hotel is a millstone. I'll tear it down, build something modern. You'll get a small settlement, enough to live modestly. Isn't that what spinsters do?" Frank stepped forward, and Catherine felt the tension radiating from him. "Miss Vandermeer has legal representation. You can address your claims through proper channels." Edward's gaze slid to Frank, dismissive as a man studying a servant. "And you are the hotel manager. How quaint. Hiring staff you can't afford." Edward turned back to Catherine. "I'll see you in court, cousin. 60 days to prove those shares are yours. When you fail, I'll own this building and everything in it." He climbed back into his carriage, leaving his surveyors to finish their measurements. Catherine watched him depart, rage and fear warring in her chest. Frank touched her elbow gently. "Come inside. You're freezing." That night, the snow intensified. By morning, it had become something unprecedented, a blizzard that would enter history books as the Great Blizzard of 1888. Wind howled through Manhattan's streets, piling drifts 15 feet high. Telegraph wires snapped under the weight of ice. The city, unprepared, ground to a halt. The Vandermeer Hotel's 8 guests were trapped. The staff couldn't reach home through the impassable streets. Aunt Vivian, thankfully, had departed 2 days earlier to visit a friend in Brooklyn. Catherine found herself snowbound with Frank, 3 staff members, and 8 increasingly anxious strangers. They made the best of it. Mrs. Chen rationed the kitchen supplies. Thomas kept the coal furnace burning, though fuel was running low. Mary helped Catherine prepare rooms for the staff to sleep. And Frank became the calm center around which everything revolved, organizing meal schedules, entertaining guests with card games, ensuring no panic took hold. By the second day, the storm showed no signs of abating. The world beyond the windows had vanished into white chaos. The hotel creaked and groaned, but its old bones held firm. Catherine found Frank in the lobby late that night, alone by the dying fire. Everyone else had retired, exhausted by the day's efforts. She carried 2 glasses of her father's brandy, hoarded for emergencies, and surely this qualified. "For warmth," she said, handing him one. "For courage, more like." But he accepted it, and they sat in the leather chairs that had become their evening sanctuary. The firelight painted shadows across his face, softening the hard lines of worry. "We'll run out of coal tomorrow. We'll burn furniture if we must. The guests' safety comes first. You're good at this. Managing crisis." Frank sipped the brandy, watching her over the rim of the glass. "Your father would be proud." The words pierced her armor. "My father would have sold the hotel years ago if he'd seen clearly. He loved it too much to be practical. Is that such a terrible flaw?" "It left me alone and drowning in debt." "Not alone." Frank's voice was quiet. "Not anymore." The air between them shifted, charged with something unspoken. Catherine was acutely aware of how close they sat, how the storm had stripped away all pretense and propriety. They were simply 2 people, thrown together by circumstance, finding something neither had sought. "Frank," she set down her glass, "earlier, before Edward came, you said you needed to tell me something, about who you are." He was silent for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Wind rattled the windows, and somewhere upstairs, a shutter banged rhythmically. Finally, he spoke. "My full name is Frank Rockefeller Stone. My mother was John D. Rockefeller's cousin. I grew up on the edges of that family's empire, close enough to see how it was built, far enough to maintain some illusion of independence." Catherine's breath caught. "Rockefeller. I left when I was 25. I couldn't stomach the methods, the monopolies, The crushed competitors, the politicians bought like commodities. John D. is brilliant, but ruthless. I wanted no part of it. His hands tightened on the glass. I changed my name to Stone, worked my way across the country taking whatever honest labor I could find. I've been running from that legacy for 9 years. Why tell me now? Because your grandfather's shares, Catherine, I might be able to help you prove they're legitimate. The family keeps records and correspondence. I have contacts, people who owe me favors. He turned to face her fully, and the firelight caught the gray of his eyes, turning them silver. But if I do this, Edward will discover who I am. He'll claim I seduced you for access to the shares, that we're conspiring to defraud him. The scandal will be enormous. Catherine processed this slowly. Frank Rockefeller Stone, the man she'd hired as hotel manager, was heir to one of America's greatest fortunes, and he'd walked away from it. What you're offering? It would destroy the anonymity you've built. Yes. Why risk it? He set down the brandy and reached for her hand, his calloused fingers warm around hers. Because in 3 months working beside you, I found something I never had in 9 years of running. Purpose, partnership, something real. His thumb traced circles on her palm, sending warmth up her arm. Because when I imagine you losing this hotel, losing your fight, it feels like losing something vital. Frank, she couldn't find more words. Her heart hammered against her ribs. I know what society will say, the spinster and her fortune-hunting manager. But Catherine, I swear on everything I value, I didn't know about the shares when I came here. I didn't know you'd become... What? She whispered. Everything. He kissed her then, gentle and questioning, his free hand cupping her face. Catherine leaned into it, into him, tasting brandy and smoke and the promise of something she'd stopped believing existed. The hotel groaned around them, the blizzard howled, and none of it mattered because she was warm. She was found. She was kissing a man who'd walked away from millions to seek honest work. When they finally pulled apart, breathless, Frank rested his forehead against hers. We fight this together. Edward, the courts, all of it. Whatever comes, together, Catherine agreed, and sealed it with another kiss. The storm raged for 3 more days, but inside the Vandermeer Hotel, beside the failing fire, 2 people had found their own shelter. The city dug itself out slowly. Drifts taller than men blocked streets. Businesses remained shuttered. The death toll climbed past 200, but by the end of the week, life crept back toward normalcy, and with it, Edward's assault began in earnest. The first salvo appeared in the New York Herald. Vandermeer spinster claims Rockefeller fortune. Edward Vandermeer, respected banker. Contest cousin's dubious inheritance claim. The article painted Catherine as a desperate woman grasping at straws, her failing hotel proof of poor judgment. Edward was the wronged party, defending the family's rightful assets against fraud. Bastard, Aunt Vivian muttered, reading over breakfast in Catherine's apartment. She'd returned to find the hotel abuzz with gossip. He's poisoning public opinion before the case even reaches court. Frank studied the article with narrowed eyes. This is strategy. He's making it socially costly for anyone to support you. Judges read newspapers. Juries see headlines. Can we respond? Catherine's coffee had gone cold, but she couldn't stomach it anyway. Not directly. It looks defensive. Frank tapped the paper thoughtfully. But we can build our own narrative. You need allies. People of standing who'll vouch for your character. The problem was, Catherine's standing had eroded over 2 years of social isolation. The invitations had stopped coming. The calling cards had ceased. Who would champion her now? The answer came from an unexpected quarter. Mrs. Adelaide Thornton arrived at the hotel that afternoon, her carriage navigating the snow-clogged streets with difficulty. She was 70, if she was a day, a dowager of impeccable lineage who'd known Catherine's mother. Dressed in black silk with a fur muff, she swept into the lobby like a ship of the line entering harbor. Catherine Vandermeer. I read the most offensive drivel about you this morning. Catherine dropped into a startled curtsy. Mrs. Thornton, I thank you for coming. Don't thank me yet. I came to investigate whether you're truly a scheming opportunist or simply a victim of masculine greed. Sharp blue eyes assessed Catherine from head to toe. My conclusion, Edward Vandermeer is a parasite, and you are your mother's daughter. Therefore, I'm hosting a reception in your honor next week. You'll attend, you'll be charming, and you'll remind society that the Hartley line has more integrity than the Vandermeer branch ever did. Catherine blinked. Mrs. Thornton, I don't know what to say. Say yes Wear something decent and bring your hotel manager. The newspapers are already whispering about him. Mrs. Thornton's gaze shifted to Frank, who'd emerged from the back office. Frank Rockefeller Stone. I knew your grandmother. You have her eyes. Frank went very still. Mom. Oh, stop looking like a trapped fox. Your secret's safe with me, boy. But you can't hide forever. Not if you're going to help Miss Vandermeer. She turned back to Catherine. He told you? Yes. Good. Honesty is rare in this city. Cultivate it. Mrs. Thornton swept toward the door, then paused. One more thing. Edward's not working alone. He's partnered with a consortium of bankers who want this property. They'll demolish the hotel and build an office tower. Watch for men following you. Watch your mail. Trust no one outside your immediate circle. She departed, leaving silence in her wake. Consortium, Catherine repeated. He's selling out to developers. Frank's expression had gone hard. That's why he's moving fast. The shares are secondary. He wants the land. If he can discredit you, tie you up in court long enough, the hotel's mortgage will default. The bank seizes the property, sells to Edward's partners, and everyone profits except you. How long until the mortgage comes due? 6 weeks. Catherine felt the trap closing. Even if she eventually won the shares, she'd lose the hotel before seeing a dollar. Edward had calculated perfectly. Use the contested inheritance to create chaos. Let financial pressure do the rest. We need that proof, she said. The documents showing my grandfather's legitimate partnership with Rockefeller, where would they be? Frank hesitated. There's a bank. The Merchants Trust on Wall Street. John D. keeps certain sensitive records there. Partnerships he'd rather not advertise. I might be able to access them, but it requires 2 keys. One held by the bank president, one by a designated family member. I surrendered mine when I left. He met her eyes. Edward might have obtained one. If he has, he could reach those records first and destroy anything that helps you. Then we get there first. Catherine, if I walk into that bank claiming family privilege, I'm exposing myself entirely. Edward will know who I am within hours. He'll know anyway, once Mrs. Thornton's reception happens. And he already suspects something. Why else mention fortune hunters in his note? Catherine took Frank's hands, feeling the roughness of his palms, the strength in his fingers. We're in this together. You said so yourself. He pulled her close, resting his chin atop her head. Together, even when it costs everything. They went to the Merchants Trust the next morning, dressed as respectably as their wardrobes allowed. Catherine wore her mother's best dress, sapphire wool with jet buttons. Frank had borrowed a decent suit from Thomas, who'd once served a gentleman of similar build. The bank was a temple of marble and brass, its vaulted ceiling echoing with the whispers of wealth. A clerk approached, eyebrows lifting at their modest appearance. We're here to access the Rockefeller-Hartley documents, Frank said quietly. Face, my name is Frank Rockefeller Stone. The clerk's demeanor shifted instantly. One moment, sir. He returned with the bank president himself, a portly man named Clemens, who ushered them into a private office with obsequious haste. Mr. Stone, we've not seen you in 9 years, is it? 9 years, Frank confirmed. I need access to the vault, the Hartley Partnership records, specifically. Clemens' expression grew cautious. But must those require 2 keys? As you know, you surrendered yours in 1879. I'm aware. I'm here to request access through alternative authorization. Frank produced a letter, handwritten the previous evening. This is signed by Miss Catherine Vandermeer, granddaughter of Nathaniel Hartley. As direct heir to his estate, she has legal standing to review the documents. That's irregular. Clemens studied the letter. There's a contested claim from Edward Vandermeer. Until that's resolved, the documents will prove the claim's legitimacy one way or another, Catherine interjected. Surely transparency serves everyone's interests. Clemens looked between them, clearly calculating risks. Finally, he sighed. Edward Vandermeer visited 3 days ago with the same request. He had a court order freezing access pending the inheritance dispute. Catherine's heart sank. He's blocked us. Not entirely. The order specifies that no documents may be removed or copied. It says nothing about reviewing them on premises. Clemens rang a small bell on his desk. I can allow you to examine the records in our secure reading room, with witnesses present. No papers leave the building. It was better than nothing. They followed Clemens down a spiral stair into the vault, a chamber lined with steel drawers and leather-bound volumes. He produced a key, opened drawer 247, and withdrew a tin box stamped with dual initials, RH. 1 hour, Clemens said. My clerk will remain with you. Catherine and Frank sat at a small table, the box between them. Frank opened it carefully, revealing a stack of correspondence bound with ribbon. The topmost letter was dated May 12, 1872, written in a precise hand. Dear Nathaniel, your investment of $8,000 in the Cleveland refining venture is hereby recorded. In exchange, you receive 847 shares of the Standard Oil Trust to be held in perpetuity under your daughter Margaret's name. Catherine's breath caught. There it was. Proof. John D. Rockefeller's signature at the bottom. Unmistakable. Frank sorted through more letters, his expression growing troubled. Here, this one's important. The letter was dated 1875 from Nathaniel Hartley to Rockefeller. I must protest your recent business tactics. The destruction of competitor refineries through railroad rate manipulation violates our original agreement. I invested in innovation, not monopoly. If these practices continue, I will publicize our partnership and the methods employed. He threatened to expose them, Catherine whispered. Frank nodded grimly. And that's why these records were sealed. John D. couldn't risk a respected merchant going public. So he buried the partnership, kept the shares in trust, and waited for Nathaniel to die. He looked at her. Your grandfather was trying to do the right thing. It probably got him ostracized from business circles. Catherine felt a surge of pride for a man she'd barely known. Can we use this? In court? We can testify to what we saw, but without copies. Frank glanced at the clerk, who stood by the door, watching impassively. An idea clearly formed in his mind. Excuse me, may I have paper and pen? I'd like to make notes for my own recollection. The clerk hesitated, then provided both. Frank began writing rapidly, copying passages verbatim, dates and names. Catherine did the same, their pens scratching in the silent vault. They worked feverishly, knowing their hour was limited. They managed to transcribe 5 letters before Clemens returned. Times concluded. Back in the office, Clemens eyed their notes. Sirs, those cannot leave the building as documents, but I cannot prevent you from remembering what you read. Understood. Frank folded the papers carefully. Thank you for your discretion. Mr. Stone, Frank, if I may, your family's business keeps this bank quite prosperous. Whatever your differences with them, know that we respect your integrity. Clemens extended his hand. I hope Miss Vandermeer prevails. Outside, Catherine clutched the transcribed notes like a lifeline. Will this be enough? For court? Yes. If we can verify the handwriting, I can testify to John D.'s signature. You can confirm your grandfather's hand if you have samples. Frank hailed a hansom cab. But Edward will attack our credibility. The disgraced Rockefeller nephew and the desperate Spinster conspiring to forge evidence. Then we need more than documents. We need witnesses who can't be dismissed. Frank smiled grimly. I know someone, but you're not going to like it. Absolutely not. Catherine stood in the Hotel Vandermeer's lobby, staring at Frank as if he'd proposed burning the building down. You want to contact your family? The same family you've been hiding from for 9 years. Not the whole family, just my cousin Margaret. She works in John D.'s office, manages certain delicate records. Frank paced before the fireplace, agitated in a way she'd never seen. If anyone can verify those letters, confirm the dates and contents, it's her, and she owes me. Owes you? I kept certain secrets when I left, things that would have embarrassed the family. She knows I could have caused trouble and didn't. He stopped pacing, faced Catherine directly. Margaret's testimony would be unimpeachable. A Rockefeller confirming the partnership existed, that the shares are legitimately yours. Edward can't fight that. Aunt Vivian, reading in a nearby chair, looked up. It also confirms you're a Rockefeller. Every newspaper in the city will print that story. They will anyway once Mrs. Thornton's reception happens. Edward's probably already investigating me. Frank's jaw set. I've been a coward, Catherine, running, hiding, pretending I could escape my blood. But that name has power. It's time I used it for something good. Catherine moved to him, taking his hands. This isn't cowardice. You left on principle. And I'm returning on principle. Yours. He squeezed her fingers. Let me do this. She saw the determination in his eyes, the weight of a decision years in the making. All right. Contact Margaret. The telegram was sent that afternoon. Margaret, stop, need your help, stop Frank. The reply came within hours. Come to office tomorrow, stop alone, stop M. The Standard Oil offices occupied the entire 7th floor of a building on Broadway. Frank went alone, as requested, leaving Catherine pacing the hotel lobby like a caged tiger. He returned 3 hours later, exhausted but grimly satisfied. She'll testify. She confirmed everything. The partnership, the shares, even the reason for secrecy. He collapsed into a chair. But there's a price. What price? I have to attend the family dinner next week, face John D., answer for my departure, explain my current circumstances. Frank's smile was bitter. Margaret says he's curious about the lost nephew. That can't be good. Catherine knelt beside his chair. I'll come with you. Catherine, these dinners are brutal. Every word is a negotiation, every silence a test. I don't want you subjected to that. We're partners. You face the bank for me. I'll face your family for you. Frank pulled her up and into his arms, holding her tightly. How did I find you? You answered a help-wanted ad for $40 a month. His laugh was genuine, the tension breaking. Best decision I ever made. The Rockefeller family dinner was held at John D.'s mansion on West 54th Street, a 4-story monument to industrial supremacy. Catherine wore her mother's pearls and a gown borrowed from Mrs. Thornton, deep green silk that brought out her eyes. Frank wore a new suit, purchased with the last of his savings, and looked like he was walking to an execution. They were announced by a butler, whose expression suggested he served royalty. The dining room could have held 30. Tonight it held 8. John D. Rockefeller sat at the head of the table, 68 years old, with hard eyes and a mouth that looked unused to smiling. His wife Laura was elegant and cold. Margaret, Frank's cousin, was a sharp-featured woman of 40 who nodded minutely at Catherine. The others were various relations and associates. Frank, John D.'s voice was quiet, which somehow made it more commanding. You've decided to rejoin civilization. Temporarily. Frank held Catherine's chair, then sat beside her. I'm here because Miss Vandermeer needs the family's assistance with a legal matter. So Margaret indicated, a contested inheritance involving shares I allocated 30 years ago. John D.'s gaze shifted to Catherine, assessing, Miss Vandermeer, your grandfather was an irritating man, principled to a fault. I consider that a compliment, sir. Catherine met his eyes steadily, a ghost of a smile. You should. Nathaniel Hartley had integrity I couldn't buy. He invested in my ventures, then tried to hold me to ethical standards that would have bankrupted us all. John D. sipped wine. When he threatened exposure, I could have destroyed him. Instead, I honored our agreement, kept the shares in trust, and waited. Now his granddaughter appears, requesting validation. Why should I provide it? Frank answered before Catherine could. Because it's the truth. Because those shares were legitimately issued, and Edward Vandermeer is trying to steal them through legal manipulation. Because you've involved yourself, and now I'm curious. John D. cut him off. You walked away from this family, Frank, declared us moral bankrupts, worked as a hotel manager, of all things. And now you return, advocating for a woman whose property claim depends on our testimony. One might suspect romantic entanglement. One would be correct. Frank's hand found Catherine's under the table. I love her. I'll help her regardless of your decision. But your support would ensure justice. The room went silent. Laura Rockefeller's eyebrows rose. Margaret hid a smile behind her napkin. John D. studied them both for a long moment. Then he said, Margaret, you've reviewed the documentation? Yes, sir. The partnership was legitimate. The shares properly issued. Edward Vandermeer's claim has no legal foundation. Then we'll testify to that effect. I'll not have the Standard Oil name associated with fraud, even indirectly. John D. returned his attention to Frank. But understand, boy, once you surface publicly as family, you're back in the game. Society will expect things. So will I. I'm not rejoining the company. I wouldn't have you. You're too soft for this business. It might have been an insult, but John D.'s tone suggested grudging respect. But you're still a Rockefeller. That name opens doors, creates opportunities. Use it properly. Frank nodded slowly. I will, just not the way you'd prefer. Dinner proceeded with agonizing formality. Catherine answered questions about her hotel, her plans, her family with as much grace as she could muster. She felt examined, judged, weighed against invisible standards, but she also felt Frank's steady presence beside her, his quiet support. As they departed, Margaret caught Catherine's arm. He's different with you, happier. Don't let my uncle intimidate you. Frank chose well. Thank you. And Miss Vandermeer, win this fight. Women like us have to win. Otherwise, the Edwards of the world learn they can take whatever they want. The court date was set for March 15th. Edward Dallas, learning of the Rockefeller family's involvement, intensified his campaign. More newspaper articles appeared, each more vicious than the last. Rockefeller scion seduces hotel spinster. Standard Oil conspiracy to defraud honest banker. Catherine's reputation was shredded in print. Invitations to Mrs. Thornton's reception were hastily withdrawn by nervous society matrons. The hotel's remaining guests checked out, spooked by the scandal. "We're losing," Catherine said one evening, staring at empty reservation book. Frank disagreed. "We're winning where it matters. Edward's desperate. That's why he's attacking so viciously. He knows the legal ground is shifting beneath him. But if I lose the hotel before we even get to trial..." "You won't." Frank produced an envelope. "I sold some personal items, railroad stocks I'd kept from before I left. It's enough to cover the mortgage payment and buy us another month." Catherine stared at him. "Frank, that was your security. You're my security now. We rise or fall together." She kissed him then, fierce and grateful, pouring everything she couldn't say into that connection. The preliminary hearing was held in a courthouse downtown, before Judge Aldrich, a stern man of 60 with a reputation for impartiality. Edward arrived with 3 lawyers and an air of confidence. Catherine had Frank, Aunt Vivian, and the transcribed notes from the bank. Edward's lead attorney stood, "Your Honor, this case is simple. Margaret Hartley married into the Vandermeer family, thus transferring all assets to her husband's estate. The shares in question legally belong to that estate's heirs. My client, Harrison Whitmore, the lawyer Mrs. Thornton had retained for Catherine, Rose. The shares were held in trust specifically under Mrs. Vandermeer's maiden name to keep them separate from marital property. We have documentation proving this intent. Documentation provided by a discredited Rockefeller and a desperate woman," Edward's lawyer sneered. "Your Honor, Frank Stone, or should I say Frank Rockefeller, is a disgraced family member with every reason to fabricate evidence, and Miss Vandermeer stands to gain hundreds of thousands. Their testimony is worthless." Judge Aldrich looked to Whitmore. "Do you have corroborating witnesses?" "Yes, Your Honor. We call Margaret Rockefeller and Mr. John D. Rockefeller himself." The courtroom erupted in whispers. Edward's confident expression cracked. Margaret testified first, cool and precise, confirming the partnership's legitimacy, the trust structure, everything. Then John D. took the stand, an event unprecedented enough that journalists filled every seat. "Mr. Rockefeller," Whitmore asked, "did you enter into partnership with Nathaniel Hartley in 1872? "I did." "Were shares issued in his daughter's name specifically to protect them from marital asset laws?" "They were." Nathaniel was progressive. He wanted his daughter to have independent wealth. John D. Sweat's voice carried absolute certainty. "Those shares belong to her heirs. Miss Vandermeer's claim is legitimate." Edward's lawyer tried to shake him on cross-examination. But John D. Rockefeller was not a man easily shaken. He left the stand having demolished Edward's case. Judge Aldrich didn't even call recess. "I find for the plaintiff. The shares are Miss Vandermeer's by right. Mr. Edward Vandermeer's claim is dismissed with prejudice." The gavel fell. Catherine felt Frank's arm around her, steadying her as relief flooded through. They'd won. The shares were hers. Edward's face had gone white. He pushed past his lawyers, out of the courtroom, fleeing the consequences of his gambit. Outside, on the courthouse steps, journalists shouted questions. Flash powder exploded as photographers captured the moment. Catherine stood beside Frank, Aunt Vivian on her other side, and answered simply, "Justice was served. My grandfather's legacy is secure. That's all that matters." But as they descended to the waiting carriage, she saw Frank's expression, not triumph, but weary relief. He'd exposed himself, burned every bridge to his old life. For her sake, she would spend the rest of her life ensuring he never regretted it. Edward Vandermeer's fall was swift and absolute. Within a week of the judgment, his position at Morgan & Company was quietly terminated. His consortium of banker allies, those who'd planned to profit from the hotel's demolition, distanced themselves rapidly, unwilling to associate with public failure. The clubs that had welcomed him for his family name now found his membership suddenly inconvenient. Catherine learned all this from Mrs. Thornton, who tracked society scandals with the precision of a general studying battlefield reports. "He's fled to Philadelphia," the Dowager reported over tea in the Hotel Vandermeer's newly reopened dining room. Some cousin offered him a junior position in a textile firm. He'll spend the rest of his days in obscurity, which is exactly what he deserves. Catherine felt no triumph, only tired relief. I don't wish him suffering. I just wanted what was mine. That, my dear, is why you won. Mrs. Thornton set down her cup. Virtue isn't always rewarded, but blatant greed is usually punished. Edward couldn't imagine a world where integrity mattered more than manipulation. The shares had been transferred to Catherine's name 3 days after the verdict. The actual certificates arrived in a locked case, delivered by Whitmore himself. She'd sat in her father's old office, now hers, and simply stared at them. Small pieces of paper representing more money than her family had seen in 3 generations. Frank found her there, ran his fingers over her shoulders. What are you thinking? That I could sell these tomorrow, pay every debt, live comfortably for the rest of my life without working another day? You could. I won't. She turned to face him. This hotel, it's not just a building. It's my father's dream, my family's history. The shares give me a choice I didn't have before. I choose to save it. Frank smiled, the expression lighting his entire face. Then let's begin. The restoration of the Vandermeer Hotel became Catherine's passion project. She kept 400 shares, selling the rest for $178,000, a fortune that made bankers treat her with sudden, obsequious respect. Every dollar was allocated, debts paid in full, mortgage cleared, and the remainder split between restoration and operational reserves. Frank managed the physical work. Contractors repaired the cracked marble, replaced worn carpets, reupholstered furniture. Gaslighting was supplemented with new electric fixtures, modernity married to tradition. The facade was cleaned until the brick glowed russet in the afternoon sun. The sign above the entrance, which had hung crooked for years, was straightened and regilded. The Vandermeer Hotel, East, 1852. But Catherine's innovation went deeper than cosmetics. I want to do something unprecedented, she told Frank one evening as they reviewed architectural plans. This hotel should welcome women traveling alone. No chaperone required, no questions asked. Professional women, widows, anyone who needs safe and respectable lodging. Frank looked up from the drawings. You'll face criticism. Society doesn't approve of independent women. Society can adapt or stay elsewhere. Catherine's voice was firm. I spent years being told what a spinster could or couldn't do. I'm done accepting those limitations. They created a ladies' floor, the entire 3rd story reserved for women guests, with a dedicated entrance, a reading room stocked with newspapers and novels, and female staff. It was radical. It was necessary. The hotel reopened in June of 1888 with a reception that drew 200 guests. Mrs. Thornton attended, of course, along with a carefully curated selection of society figures who appreciated innovation over convention. Journalists came, intrigued by the unusual policies, and Frank's family sent representatives, Margaret, along with John D., his wife Laura, who pronounced the reading room quite civilized. Catherine wore emerald silk, her mother's pearls, and a confidence she'd earned through fire. She moved through the crowd with Frank at her side, accepting congratulations and deflecting the occasional snide comment about her unconventional partnership with her hotel manager. Let them talk, Frank murmured. They'll be booking rooms within a month. He was right. By August, the Vandermeer was fully booked, with a waiting list. The combination of elegant restoration and progressive policies attracted exactly the clientele Catherine had envisioned. Businesswomen, traveling artists, educators, widows with independent means. The hotel became known as a place where respectable women could stay without judgment. Revenue climbed. Catherine hired more staff, including 3 women for management positions, a decision that raised eyebrows but proved sound. Mrs. Chen expanded the kitchen, offering menus that rivaled the city's finest restaurants. The Vandermeer became profitable for the first time in 5 years, and through it all, Frank was her partner, not just in business, but in everything. The proposal happened quietly, without audience or fanfare. It was late September, and they'd stolen an hour to walk in Central Park, newly landscaped, a green oasis in the city's stone heart. Leaves were just beginning to turn, splashes of gold among the green. Catherine wore a simple day dress, Frank in shirt sleeves, his jacket slung over one shoulder. They'd been discussing expansion plans, possibly purchasing the building next door, when Frank suddenly stopped walking. "Marry me," Catherine turned, certain she'd misheard. "What? Marry me?" Frank took her hands. his grey eyes steady. "Not because it's practical, not because society expects it, but because I can't imagine a future without you in it. Because you're the bravest person I know. Because when I wake up, the first thing I think about is whether you've had coffee yet. And when I go to sleep, I want to be next to you." She felt tears prick her eyes. "Frank, I know the arguments. I'm a scandal. You're a businesswoman. Marriage would complicate ownership and independence and a dozen other practical concerns. I don't care. I want to build this life with you, legally and permanently." He released one hand to pull a small box from his pocket. Inside was a ring, simple gold, no elaborate setting, just a single emerald, the color of her eyes. "I had it made from a stone I've carried since I left the family. Something pure, untainted by standard oil money. Like us." Catherine couldn't speak past the lump in her throat. She nodded, then found her voice. "Yes, yes, of course yes." Frank slid the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly. They kissed there in the park, under the September sky, while the city roared around them and didn't notice at all. They married in November, in a small ceremony at the hotel. Aunt Vivian wept throughout, dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief. Mrs. Thornton served as witness, along with Margaret Rockefeller, who'd become an unexpected friend. The guest list was intimate. Staff, close friends, a handful of society figures who appreciated Catherine's independence. Frank wore a new suit, Catherine a dress of champagne silk with her mother's pearls. They exchanged vows written themselves, promising partnership, honesty and mutual respect, words that mattered more than conventional pledges. When Frank kissed his bride, the small gathering applauded, and Catherine felt something she'd thought lost forever, absolute, uncomplicated joy. The reception was held in the hotel's dining room, now fully restored to its former glory. As Catherine danced with her husband, she caught sight of their reflection in one of the gilt mirrors. They looked like themselves, not society darlings or robber baron relatives, but two people who'd fought for something real and won. Later, alone in their shared suite, the entire fourth floor's corner apartment, with views of the city they'd conquered, Frank pulled her close. "Any regrets?" he asked. "Only that we wasted 3 months with me calling you Mr. Stone." Catherine traced the line of his jaw. "And you, that I didn't answer your help-wanted advertisement sooner." They laughed, and the sound filled the space that had once echoed with loneliness. 5 years later, the spring of 1893 arrived with unusual warmth. Catherine stood at the window of the hotel's expanded office. They'd purchased the neighboring building 2 years ago, watching the street below. Carriages and the occasional automobile navigated the cobblestones. The city was growing taller, faster, more electric by the day. Behind her, papers rustled. Frank was reviewing applications for their newest venture, a second hotel in Boston, designed specifically for working women. The Vandermeer model had proven so successful that expansion felt inevitable. "Listen to this one," Frank said. "I managed a boarding house in Vermont for 6 years, but I want to do more. Your hotels treat women as capable humans, not children requiring supervision. I can help build that. She sounds perfect. Interview her." Catherine turned from the window, smiling at her husband. 5 years had added silver to his temples, deepened the lines around his eyes. He'd never looked better to her. "We need someone who understands the mission, not just the mechanics." A knock at the door interrupted them. Mary, now head of housekeeping, with a staff of 15, poked her head in. "Mrs. Stone, your aunt is here with the children." "Send them in." Aunt Vivian entered with controlled chaos in tow. William, age 3, his dark hair hopelessly mussed, and baby Eleanor just learning to walk, clutching her grandmother's hand. Catherine scooped up William while Frank caught Eleanor mid-stumble. "They've been asking for the garden," Vivian said, collapsing into a chair with exaggerated exhaustion. "I told them you were working, but William insists you promised to show him the new rose bushes." "I did promise." Catherine kissed her son's forehead. "Frank, can you manage without me for an hour?" "I'll suffer somehow." He was already bouncing Eleanor, making her giggle. The sound filled the office with light. They went down to the hotel's garden, a courtyard created when they'd knocked through the wall between the two buildings. It had become a small oasis, rose bushes, a fountain, wrought iron benches where guests could escape the city's intensity. William ran ahead, fascinated by everything, while Catherine followed at Eleanor's toddling pace. "You've built something remarkable," Vivian said quietly, walking beside her. "Your father would be proud beyond words." "I had help," Catherine watched Frank show William how to smell a rose without getting pricked by thorns. More than help, partnership. That's rarer than you think, my dear. Most marriages are transactions. Yours is transformation. You both became more than you were alone. Catherine thought about the frightened, exhausted woman who'd placed that help-wanted advertisement 5 years ago. She'd been drowning, desperate, resigned to failure. Now she ran 2 hotels, employed 40 people, had helped change social conventions around women's independence, and loved a man who challenged and cherished her in equal measure. "Miss Catherine," William's voice rang out. "The roses are pink, pink like the sunset." "They are indeed." She joined her family in the garden, Eleanor on her hip, Frank's hand finding hers automatically. That night, after the children were asleep in the nursery and Vivian had retired to her suite, Catherine and Frank stood on their private balcony. The city sprawled below, gaslight and electric competing for dominance, the future and past colliding in brick and steel. "Do you ever miss it?" Catherine asked. "The anonymity, the simple life." "Never." Frank pulled her against his chest, his chin resting on top of her head. "This is the simple life, complicated by love, children, purpose, but simple in what matters. I know who I am now. I'm yours, you're mine. And together, we're building something that lasts." Catherine tilted her head back to kiss him. Together, always. Above them, stars struggled to shine through the city's glow. Below, the Vandermeer Hotel stood solid and welcoming, its windows lit like promises kept. And inside, 2 people who'd found each other against all odds held tight to what they'd built. Not just a business or a fortune, but a life of meaning, forged from courage and crowned with love. The spinster and the secret heir had won more than an inheritance. They'd won each other, and that was wealth no court could contest and no scandal could diminish. Thank you so much for staying with us until the very end. If this story moved you, please consider subscribing to our channel, leaving a like, sharing it with friends, and writing a comment below. Your support means everything to us and keeps us inspired to tell more stories filled with love, resilience, redemption, and second chances. At the end of this video, you'll find another unforgettable romance from our collection. Click and discover where the next story will take you. With all our appreciation, the Empire of Heart Stories team